You want to learn how to make this? Or this? No? Well, too bad. I'm going to show you anyways. In this video, I'm going to show you all the steps to creating this twisting cloth animation using Cinema 4D Cloth Sim and how to light and texture it using Redshift. And if you want to follow along, you can support me by downloading the project files. You can find the link to that in the description below. All right, let's do the twist. All right, so let's make some twisty cloth. So I'm just going to create a plain object, and I'm going to make this about, let's go 700 by 700. And I'll bring the segments down for this because this is going to be like our floor, or a collider. So I'll just name it that, and I'll command click and drag to duplicate that collider. And I'll up the segments here to, let's do like 300 by 300. And I'll move this up because this is going to be our cloth. And if I hit N and B, you can see how nicely subdivided that is. So the more subdivided our geometry, the more detailed simulation we'll get. So I'll hit N and then A to go back to garage shading with outlines. And now we just need to make these objects dynamic. So for the collider, I'll right click, go to simulation tags and collider. And then for the cloth, I'll right click, go to simulation tags, cloth. Okay. And so now what we need to do is make some twisty motion. So for that, we're going to go to simulate forces and rotation. And if we just add that just by default, let's see what we got just so far. And you can see some stuff's happening here. Some stuff's twisting. And basically, the thing to know about the rotation object is that the rotation's happening revolving around the z-axis here. So if I want to have everything go and rotate, where's the doodle tool? Rotate around like this, I need to just basically, let's go to my move tool. I need to rotate the rotation upwards. Rotate the rotate. Rotate inception. So I'm going to rotate this up, holding the shift key down to constrain to increments of 5 degrees. And so now our z-axis is facing upwards, and so our rotation will be around this axis. So now if I hit play, you'll see all these little wrinkles, and everything's rotating around here. Now this looks super not great, but you can see that the rotation's happening in the axis that we want. And so the one thing we need to do now is basically what the rotation object's doing is adding rotational force to the entire scene to infinity and beyond. And we actually want to constrain that to just have rotational forces like close to around the axis center and then kind of taper off maybe around here. So we just have like this twisting force that pulls in rotationally the objects here. So to do that, I'm going to constrain the strength of the rotation by using a field. So I'm just going to go and grab let's get a cylindrical field. And let's change the orientation or the direction there. And so what is going to happen now is inside of this darker wireframe is going to be full strength of our rotation object. And then we're going to taper from the outside of this wireframe here to the other wireframe here from 100% strength of the rotation to 0% strength. Okay, so that's going to constrain the strength of our rotation force there. So now if I go ahead and hit play, you can see that our cloth falls, and let me actually just hide the collider from render view and viewport view, so we're just seeing the cloth here, and you're seeing that nothing's happening at all. And this is because we're constraining the pretty tiny strength of our rotation to just this cylindrical field. But let's go crazy. Let's go to like 1200 strength, and let's see what we got. Now you can start to see, okay, now we're getting this rotation. It's happening within this cylindrical field, within these boundaries. Okay, so now we're getting this nice twisty motion, and this is looking, I mean, it's okay. We could do a lot better though. The first thing I'm gonna do is we have full gravity on, and in real life, we can't really turn off gravity, but in Cinema 4D we can. So if I hold Control or Command D, and go to the simulation tab and go to scene, here's where we can adjust the strength of our overall gravity. So just because we, real life plays by real world physics doesn't mean we have to, do that. We can break the rules of gravity and say, forget you, Einstein, we can not have gravity perfectly gravity-tastic, I don't know what I'm saying, but we're just going to turn down the gravity a little bit. So this will allow our cloth to be a little more floaty. So if I now hit play, you can see that now we are really able to, like, that rotation object's really pulling on our cloth now because there's less gravity and friction to work with. So with that, we can go and let's maybe bring down the angular strength to maybe 500. And, you know, this is looking okay so far, but we can art direct this or fart direct this a little bit better here. So what I'd like to do is add a little bit more turbulence to the scene keyword. And so to do that, we're going to go to our simulate menu again and grab a turbulence object. And so what this is going to do, let's just give ourselves like 300 frames to work with here, so we can let our simulation play out. And if I go and hit play, and what I'm going to do is just crank up the turbulence here and the scale, and now you can start to see what's happening. We're getting these really nice ripples out here, which is super nice. And this is the frequency of basically the turbulence is like a noise that's adding turbulence to the scene, and the frequency is how much, how fast that turbulence noise animates. So I'll bring that down a little bit. Now you're really seeing that within, you know, less than 3 seconds, we are getting this really nice tight spiral in there. And so we could probably even pull back on the angle speed even more and hit play. But you can see that adding that turbulence adds that really nice little wrinkle action happening. You can see what happens if I go and return back to 0 and hit play. See, everything just looks very flat out here until the rotation happens. So just kind of, you know, stacking forces. And you can actually stack multiple turbulence objects. So I can go like, this is turbulent small, and this is turbulent big. And I can go and change the scale of that noise, so we'll get even bigger ripples, and you can just combine them together. So now you can see, you know, big ripples, small ripples, and you can see all the nice little ripply detail. Maybe I'll bring down the strength of both of these here, so it's a little more subtle. But you can see how everything's really nice. And if I crop in here, you can see how we can get a really nice looking simulation. But before we continue, if you're liking this tutorial so far, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe. Doing so will alert you anytime I come out with new content, and it helps me in my quest to grow my YouTube channel. Growing a YouTube channel is a dream I've had since I was a little boy, about 20 years before YouTube ever existed. If you really want to help that little boy's dream come true, be sure to leave a nice little comment in the comment section below. It helps with the algorithm and other things I don't quite understand about YouTube. Okay, thanks. So let's actually go even bigger with our cloth. Let's maybe go 1000 by 1000 and maybe up the segments here. And we'll keep the cylindrical field the same size. So we're just working with more cloth here to pull in. And so we'll let this play here, and that's looking really nice. Now, if we wanted to slow this down a little bit, maybe add a little bit more drag to the scene, we can hit Control D and go to our simulation scene settings again, and go to the simulation tab and up the damping. And what this is going to do is basically bring all of the, like the particle, this is all particle based. And so these forces are moving these particles, and what damping is going to do, whoops, let me go back to there. Yep. And what that's going to do is just bring all those particles to rest a little bit, or remove energy over time. So damping is basically just going to dampen down like the energy here. Another way to do that is either keyframing the damping, or we can go and be like, okay, once this really starts rotating, maybe around like, you know, frame 110, we can just keyframe the angle speed. So we're going to have less rotational force. So maybe over, you know, 40 frames, this rotational force goes down to like 80. Okay. So what we'll have is stronger rotational force from the get-go. And then over time, we'll kind of pull back on it, because otherwise this thing's just going to spin into a very tiny knot that may or may not look all that great. But there's actually other ways to retime things too. You can right click on the cloth tag, you can bake as Alembic, and then with that Alembic file, you can retime. And I'll show that in just a second here, but I'll let this play out. Barely seeing the turbulence strength, so maybe I'll up those a little bit, get more of those nice little wrinkles happening. That's looking really good. And this is looking nice. So you can see that I keyframed the rotation. So we're already down here. We're at that 80 angle speed strength, and we're still seeing the rotation. So you can see that, you know, all this stuff is kind of undulating, and this is just where you can have a lot of control over this twist. You can even keyframe the size of this spherical or this cylindrical field to get the exact type of twist that you want. So that's looking pretty nice. You can see if this goes too long and the strength is too much, you get this really tight spiral that kind of sticks out, which you may or may not want. You can see how this looks really janky too. So to fix that, we'll just throw the cloth in a cloth object. Where are you? Where are you, cloth object? You're probably yelling at the screen. There, oh, there it is, just at the top. And with everything new, they moved everything around, and I don't know. It's sometimes hard to find things. I could also just go Shift C and then just cloth. So you do that as well. But yeah, so we're going to add the cloth surface, and we can subdivide it, and we can also thicken it a little bit. So maybe make it a thickness of 0.1, so it's not just a super thin. You can see right here the thickness. Before the cloth surface, this was just a very, like, this had no thickness at all. So you want some thick cloth, and there you go. See what that looks like. Another thing you can do is, this is a pretty sharp edge. So you can kind of combine and maybe not subdivide using the cloth surface, but subdivide with a subdivision surface. And what this is going to allow you to do is, you can see how that just smoothed out that edge there. So before and then after, smoothed out that edge, looking nice. And you can see how much nicer our cloth sim looks here. So I'll just turn those off. Janky, not janky. So while we're kind of messing around with the simulation, though, of course you want to turn these off because these are, you know, it's going to slow down your simulation in your viewport. And so what I like to do is maybe even lower the subdivision in the viewport, but then render at a higher subdivision. So you can do that. So one last little thing I like to do is, you know, we have this, the turbulence to add the nice, you know, break up the monotony of this rotation. Another way we can do this is actually adding another field in here to kind of adjust the strength. So these fields you can use as like blending modes. And let's just say we wanted to layer some noise, or like a black and white noise matte on top of the cylindrical field to kind of adjust the strength and make the strength a little bit more random across this cylindrical field. So to do that, I'm going to add a random field. We'll change this to overlay. And now what we can do is up the animation speed of this. And what this is going to do is, let me go to the random field, view settings, and let's see that noise. So basically what we're doing is overlaying this and varying the strength of the cylindrical field here. So let's actually scale up that noise and go to the remapping, and let's up the inner offset. So clamp that a little bit. And then what this should do, if we hit play again, you can see that it's not as like uniform. We're getting a little bit of variance as far as like what's going on with this cylindrical field. Actually, this will be more pronounced if we just do, let's try, it was on, I think the default is multiply. So this might give you a good idea of what this is looking like. So yeah, so now you can see the multiply across everything, and this is looking pretty good. So we're changing the strength just a little bit here and just kind of breaking up the monotony of the cylindrical field. So just varying everything a little bit. So this is looking really, really nice. I think we're ready to render, but I just want to show you that one last thing. If you want to retime this using Alembic, I'm just going to go and right click, go to Bake as Alembic, just save this here. And that's just where you're going to save this Alembic file. And so sometimes this can take a little bit, so I'll just let this go. Put some nice waiting on the phone music or something. By the way, if you're new to Cinema 4D and a lot of stuff I'm covering in this tutorial is not quite making sense, be sure to check out my Cinema 4D courses over at schoolofmotion.com. There you can use promo code EYEDESYN100 to save $100 on either of my Cinema 4D courses. All right, let's get back to it. So with that finished, I have this cloth.abc file that I can just bring into here. And you can see that basically what this is, I can just hit play, and that's the baked down simulation, which plays really, really good, really, really fast in my viewport. And you can see towards the end there, things get a little too wrinkled, so maybe I'd have to turn down the strength even more so we get this more gradual thing. But what we could do with this Alembic file is we can do time remapping, and we can also adjust the speed. So what we can do is say, okay, actually, I want to clip the very end where it gets really clamped up. And so that's what we can do here. So that's the end. I can just clamp that to be like, okay, well, actually, this is the end. And right click and go to spline presets. Let's do, actually do point types, and let's do easy ease. Actually, let's select all the points by hitting Command and Control A, right click, and then actually let's do soft. And so we got this nice soft curve, and basically this is like your time remapping. So we can do you know, the popular matrix bullet time kind of thing where it goes and ramps up like that. Let's move this curve a little bit closer here so you can see what this looks like. So we got, let's do that even steeper, so you can see how we can really get that nice fast twist from the get-go just by doing this retime and just adjusting everything here. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's a nice twist up like that. And so this is one way you can retime dynamics that's really, really nice. We can add that subdivision surface back, and again, it's right there. It's right in front of my face both times. I'm still missing it. So let's go here, turn off the subdivisions here, and then just add that little bit of thickness. And voila, we got our cloth with a little bit of thickness going on there. And finishing touches here. One thing that you need to be aware of if you have your Cinema 4D subscription is in the asset browser, there is always content being updated. So if you click on new content, you can see all of these Redshift ready 3D models with all the textures, and they're constantly adding. And one of the recent things that was added within the date of me recording this tutorial was all these really nice cloth, Redshift cloth materials. So what we can do is let's get like some nice satin, some nice silky satin, shiny satin. We can just apply that to our cloth object here. Got to make sure we are in Redshift using the Redshift renderer, and then this should hopefully show up here. There we go, nice and shiny. Close out the asset browser and start the IPR, and there we go. We don't have any lights in our scene, but that looks pretty nice. Let's go to our 4-up view. Let's add a area light. It's a little bigger. Do the barn door action where we reduce the spread, so we got this nice kind of cool dramatic look. And actually, let's go to cameras, use selected object as a camera, and let's turn off the IPR. And this way we can actually like look through your light. So it'd be like, okay, I want to focus the light there. If we turn on, we use default camera again and go to start IPR, you can see what we got going, and we'll just bring down the barn doors even more. Pull back on the exposure there. So we got this nice slice of light. If we zoom in here, this looks so dramatic. Look at that nice contrasty, dramatic lighting we got there. Looking pretty cool. And then let's maybe, let's add a camera, look through it, and voila, we got something looking pretty good. Definitely could dial in the lighting a little bit more. But that's basically how you can get a nice cloth twisty animation using Cinema 4D, a little bit of Redshift. And that's how you can twist some cloth into a knot, which is something that happens to my stomach anytime I eat Chipotle. So what else do you want me to cover in future tutorials? Leave a comment, and I may or may not do that thing. The more fire emojis, though, the more likely I'll actually do that. Alright, I'm out of here. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again real soon in one of these little crazy weird videos I make. See you later. Alright, so there you go. That's how you can twist some cloth into a little knot, kind of like my stomach feels after I have too much Chipotle.